Hello, I'm Bob Christ, contributing editor and photographer at National Geographic Traveler magazine and travel columnist for Outdoor Photographer magazine. I'll be your host for this Nikon School program, a hands-on guide to creative lighting. It's packed with valuable information, demonstration, and instruction to get you shooting as soon as possible. We'll talk about light itself, review some of the basics of lighting for photography, and follow up with an in-depth overview and demonstration of the outstanding Nikon creative lighting system. I'm also excited to have renowned photographer and colleague Joe McNally joining me. Joe and I will venture into the field to capture real-life images in a diverse set of scenarios. So let's get started. As we explore the many facets of light, it becomes clear that light is the single most important tool that a photographer has to work with. In fact, the very meaning of the word photography is drawing or writing with light. Now, the more you understand about light, how to use it, how to modify it, and what subject matter looks good in what type of light, the stronger your photographs will become. You know, a photo editor friend of mine at National Geographic Traveler magazine once told me that he'd rather look at a photograph of a line of hanging laundry shot in beautiful light than a picture of the Taj Mahal shot in dull, ugly light. But what is it that makes light beautiful, or dull, or ugly, or magical? These are all very abstract words that may not help us understand the nature of light or how we can work with it. We need to break the subject down into more concrete terms. Now, even though we're going to be discussing the use of flash and the Nikon creative lighting system of speedlights, let's start by talking about the sun. It's our main, well, really, it's our only source of natural light. And even though there's only one sun, at least in this solar system, there are a myriad of variations of the light coming from it. Now, in order to understand how to use your flash to its greatest potential, you've got to first understand the basic variables of available or natural light, because the same principles apply. Now, we can break these variables down into three basic categories. The direction of light: is it coming from the front, the side, behind, below, or above the subject? The color of light: is it warm or cool, orange or blue? And the quality of light: is it hard-edged and specular with sharp, deep shadows, or soft and diffused with open or even non-existent shadows? Learn to match the right variables within these three categories to the appropriate subject matter, and you're taking a giant step forward in your development as a photographer. If photography means drawing with light, then these are your tools. First, let's look at the direction that the light is coming from in relation to the subject. Now, why is this important? Because the world we live in is three-dimensional. The imaging sensor that we record on and the paper that we print on are only two-dimensional. The only way we can capture that feeling of depth on our two-dimensional media is by the interplay of light and shadow. Shadows are as important as light, and where you place them means everything. Hence the importance of the direction of the light. Now, the Italian painters of the Renaissance had a word for this interplay of light and shadow to create the illusion of depth. They called it chiaroscuro. Now, the color of light is also important, and yes, daylight comes in a variety of colors. In the early morning and late afternoon, the longer rays of the red-orange spectrum are more prevalent, and that's when you get that lovely warm light that's so favored by landscape photographers. During twilight, you get a bluish quality of light, as you do in deep shade. At high noon, sunlight is at its most neutral, or white. But why is the color of light important for us to consider as photographers? Because the color of the light directly affects the mood of your photo, and that affects the viewer. Reddish-orange tones can convey a feeling of warmth and well-being. Bluish tones feel cool. Greenish light, the kind put out by fluorescence, makes people look sick. And pure white light, such as that at high noon, can be accurate, but a little clinical. So the color of light affects the way the viewer reacts to your photograph. Finally, let's look at the quality of the light. Specular light, the kind that comes from the sun on a clear, bright, sunny day, is sharp and contrasty with deep, clearly defined shadows. Diffused light is the kind of light that occurs when a large layer of clouds passes between the sun and the subject, or if the subject is in shade. Because the light is broader than the little orb of the sun, it's softer and lower in contrast, with open shadows or none at all. That's because the larger the light source is in relation to the size of the subject, the softer the light will be. In a cloudless sky, the sun is a pinpoint of light. On a cloudy day, your light source is now that giant blanket of clouds, and it's a much softer light with little or no shadow at all. Now, the key to creating a strong photograph is to match the subject matter to the appropriate type of light, and you're on your way. Let's look at a couple of situations and analyze the light quality to help you see how these three elements come together. Landscapes look great with a crisp low side light, the type you encounter in the early morning or the later afternoon. Why? Well, for a number of reasons. First, the direction, where the shadows can aid in creating that sense of depth. The quality is crisp and undiffused, so the contours of the landscape will be sharply etched to further the feeling of depth. And finally, the light color of the longer rays in the spectrum in the early morning and late afternoon are warm and beautiful. Now, portraits and people shots also look great with the light coming from the side to give a roundness to the subject. But usually, it's a softer, more diffuse light quality that is much more flattering to the human face and figure than harsh specular light. As for the color, almost any picture of a person will look healthier and more pleasing in a slightly warmer than neutral color palette. That good old golden light of early morning or late afternoon again. Okay, at this point, you may be asking yourself, if we have natural light, beautiful natural light from the sun in a myriad of configurations, why do we need anything else? Well, there are at least three reasons. First, if there's not enough light, the natural light is too low to use, you need to supplement it. This might occur indoors, at night, or even deep in shadows. Secondly, sometimes the actual range of contrast that natural light presents is too broad to record on our digital imaging sensors or our pieces of film. That's right, our eyes are amazing optical instruments. In contrasty conditions, such as those on a sunny day with bright highlights and deep shadows, they can actually see more detail in those extreme highlights and shadows than our cameras can record. Now, this is true of all current digital camera sensors and film. So, we need to lower that contrast by opening up the shadows to make them more penetrable and recordable by our cameras, either by using a flash to fill in but not eliminate the shadows with light, or some kind of physical reflector to do the same thing. Now, the third and possibly most powerful reason to go beyond working strictly with natural light is that we can actually transform the mood and look of our subject matter by using our speed lights. We can create dramatic photographs where the natural lighting conditions are either dull, dark, or downright ugly by adding the light from one or more speed lights. By mastering even just a few of the features of Nikon speedlights, we can go from merely taking snapshots to creating wonderful photographs. And Nikon speedlights make it easy. Over the years, flash technology has evolved steadily and has become more and more versatile. The creative use of flash is no longer just in the hands of a small number of experienced professionals. Today, we have the Nikon Creative Lighting System, engineered to integrate seamlessly and wirelessly with your Nikon camera to easily create wonderful flash photographs. What's different about flash? So far, we've been discussing all the similarities between flash and natural light in terms of the quality, direction, and color of the two light sources. But there are a couple of significant differences. The first and biggest difference is that while we can control the amount of natural light that hits the camera's sensor using a combination of aperture and shutter speed, flash is essentially controlled by only the aperture setting. This might be a good time for a quick review of the terms. Aperture, or f-stop, describes the size of the opening in the lens diaphragm that lets in the light. A wide or fast aperture, say f2, f2.8, or f4, lets in more light than a smaller aperture like f16, f11. Yes, the bigger the number, the smaller the aperture. Now, besides controlling the amount of light coming in through the lens, the aperture also affects the depth of field in a photograph. A wide aperture has less depth of field than a small aperture. Because the duration of the light that a flash emits is so short, beyond 1/30,000th of a second, the shutter speed of the camera, that is, the amount of time that the shutter curtains are open, doesn't really affect the amount of flash hitting the sensor or film plane. The only real way that shutter speed affects our flash is that we've got to make sure that the shutter curtains are wide open at the moment the flash goes off, so that they synchronize. The fastest shutter speed that a camera can successfully do this with a given flash is called the sync speed. It varies with the camera body. For example, some cameras can sync up to 1/250th of a second and others at 1/200th of a second. Our Nikon speed lights and cameras also have a special high-speed sync function where the flashlight pulses quickly and allows us to synchronize at much higher shutter speeds, even as high as 1/8000th of a second. We'll show you how this works, its strengths and its limitations, a little later in this video. But for now, it's just important to remember that to use flash in most situations, you have to make sure that you're shooting at the camera's sync speed or slower. Yes, that's right. Any shutter speed that is slower than the maximum sync speed can also be used with Nikon speed lights. And it's a technique called slow sync flash that we'll also be looking at later. So to recap, the amount of flash that hits the camera's imaging sensor is controlled by the aperture and not the shutter speed. Shutter speed is only important in terms of the sync speed and whether or not you want to blend in some of the ambient light using slow sync flash. Now, the second important difference between natural light and flash is that with flash, the intensity of the light falls off very quickly as the subject's distance from the light source increases. Now, you've probably seen this effect in your own flash photography. Now, there's a term in physics to describe this rapid light fall-off, and it's called the inverse square law. But what you need to remember is that your flash illumination will fall off quickly, so you can't light subjects at multiple distances with the light from just one flash. So let's work with some sample lighting setups to show you how the basic variables of direction, quality, and color of your light can be used. We'll also look at how to set up our speed lights for seamless off-camera work. All right, let's start shooting. We're working today with Taylor. She's a talented young actress from Rhode Island. Taylor, just sit right there. And here we go. Now, this is the way most of us use our flashes the first time. We stick it in the hot shoe and we aim it directly at our subject. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It produces a very frontal, very specular type of light. But is it the most flattering light? Well, not necessarily. It's kind of clinical. It's the kind of light they use to take your passport picture or your driver's license. It'll work, but it's not the most flattering that we can do. But let's just see what it does. Even with a beautiful young lady like Taylor, here we go. Okay. All righty. Let's see what we have. Okay, there she is. And as promised, it's frontal light. The shadows are behind her. The background has fallen down very much. It's very dark. We do see a lot of detail in her face, but it's a harsh light. We can see these strong shadows in her neck here. So let's see what we can do to improve that. Okay, the easiest and simplest thing you can do is to diffuse the light, change the quality of the light. Now we're going to turn a specular light source into a diffused light source by simply aiming it up at the ceiling. Now, hopefully you've got a ceiling that's 10 feet or below. It's got to be white because it'll pick up the color. But let's see what happens simply by turning the flash up towards the ceiling and creating a larger light source. Okay, Taylor, here we go. Let's see what that does for us. Now the light is coming from above. It's a much softer light quality. But now we've run into some other problems. Now the shadows, instead of being behind her, are kind of underneath. And look what it does. it picks up some shadows under the bottom of her eyes here, under her cheeks. The shadows are not where we want them. So what can we do? Well, I'm going to change the direction of the light, and I'm going to do that by using a remote flash. First, I'm going to reduce and turn off the main output of this light and use it only as a controller. Then, I'm going to take my remote light and set it up at about a 45-degree angle to tailor. Now, why am I going at a 45-degree angle? Well, it's going to create a wrap. It's going to create a change from the highlight to the shadow. And remember, we do want shadows in photography because it's that interplay of highlight and shadow that gives a sense of depth to our photographs. So we want shadows, but we want to put them exactly where we want them and not where they fall just by chance. And now, the only light that's coming from here is a pulse that controls that. So here we go, Taylor, there we go. That looks great. Okay. Now we're starting to see something going on with the direction of the light. Notice how the highlights wrap around from highlight to shadow. We've got that nice triangle of highlight over here. The direction is getting where we want it to be, but the quality is still pretty specular. It's still a pretty harsh light, especially to photograph young people in. So our next step is going to be to soften that light. So what can we do for that? We might look for another found surface that's larger, in this case, a nice white wall. And I'm going to take that light and I'm going to aim it right here. Now, the direction is going to be from the side again. The quality of the light is going to be diffused because look at the size of this light source compared to the size of the flash reflector. So the light's going to be a lot softer. So let's take a shot and see where we go with this one. Okay, Taylor, here we go. All righty. Okay. Beautiful soft light wrapping around her face like that. We've got nice broad highlights, really nice quality of light. Just wraps around there. We still have the problem of the background. We're going to deal with that. We can't neglect our backgrounds. We're losing some separation here, but the quality of the light on her face is just gorgeous. It's soft, it's glowy. That's what we're aiming for. Now, the problem with using found light sources like walls is, well, you don't often find them where you need them. And also, sometimes you find them and they're the wrong color. Now, let's take a quick look at what happens when you bounce off the wrong color found source. Here's a red wall. What's going to happen here if we bounce off a source that's not a neutral color like white or gray? Well, let's take a look. Okay, Taylor, that's it, just like that. It's easy to see that you've got to work with a neutral light source for bouncing, otherwise you're in deep trouble. This is a very mysterious, very moody shot, but it's not exactly what we're looking for a nice beauty headshot. So remember, white or light gray, something neutral. Found light sources are not going to work for us. What can a photographer do when the ceilings are too high or they're black or gray or the walls are not in the right place? Well, most of us prefer to use something like an umbrella. The umbrella is a larger light source. It's very portable. You can use it in a number of ways. You can bounce into it, or you can shoot through it. Now, most of the time when we're shooting portraits, we prefer to shoot through the umbrella. Why? As I bring this closer to Taylor, it becomes a larger light source in relation to her. If I bounce into it like this, it's a little farther away, it becomes smaller. So the direction of the light is coming from the side. The angle is 45 degrees, but now it's a diffused light source, and it's controllable. Okay, Taylor, here we go. Looking right at me. Now we're seeing the beautiful wraparound light. It's soft, it's glowy, it's controllable. And we're getting a little bit of spill on the background. We're picking up a little more separation from the background. Not enough, but a little more. We still have a problem here, I think, with some deep shadows. This is a very mysterious kind of shot, but I think for a younger subject, you want to open it up. You want to get a little more fill. Keep in mind that your eyes can see a lot more detail in shadows than our digital chips can. Our eyes are remarkable instruments, and they have a much wider range of tonal recognition than any digital chip has to date. So we might want to open up those shadows just a little. We still want shadows, but we want them to be penetrable. How can we do that? Well, we could add another light, but I prefer to use a reflector. A reflector, simply a white source. These are foldable reflectors that I can carry in the back of my camera bag anywhere. And I'm going to put that right on the shadow side here. You'll see this will catch the light coming from the umbrella. It'll bounce it back. It'll open up the shadows, but it won't override them. So let's see what the simple addition of a reflector does for this photograph. Okay, Taylor, you're looking good. There we go. All right. Let's see what that fill card does for us. Now we've got a beautiful wrap from highlight to shadow. The shadow side is nice and open. There's a glow there, catch light in her eyes. This is really starting to shape up. If I'm looking for something I want to improve on this, the background is still a little dark. We're losing the separation between her dark hair and the background and the dark blue down here. So now I need to create some kind of separation without losing this beautiful quality, this beautiful wraparound quality, the soft light. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to add a little light right onto the background. The background is too dark in our photograph, and that will lighten it up and separate it from her. So what I'm going to do is aim that light so it comes right, hits right behind where she is, and illuminates that portion of the backdrop. Okay, here we go. Looking good. I'm going to try this with the background light, and wow. Okay, that's really starting to shape up nicely. See how now, with the background light, we've got beautiful separation. Everything is clearly outlined. We've got that nice wrap of light, soft light, the main light, the fill card, the background light. It has a real feeling of dimension. She kind of pops out from the frame. It looks terrific. And honestly speaking, you could stop right here and you'd have a beautiful portrait or headshot here. But I'm seeing one little other thing I'd like to mess around with a little. And that is, I'd like to bring out a little detail in her hair there. She's got beautiful hair that you can see when it catches a highlight, it just glows. So I would like to get a little bit more of a kick over here on the shadow side of her hair. Now, funnily enough, the light I'm going to use is another light aimed right at her, and it is sometimes called a kicker or a hair light or a rim light, any one of those three terms. And the rim that it's going to light is her shoulder and her hair here. So I am going to take a third light now and try for further separation. Now, the thing to remember when you're working with a hair light or a rim light is that you want to concentrate the light. You don't want it spilling all over. So I want a specular source, and I want it to be very concentrated. So I'm going to zoom the head out a little to 200 millimeters and aim it right at her hair there. All right, so now I've got the background light, I've got a rim light or a kicker, and I've got the main soft light and a fill card. Let's see what kind of result that gives us. Okay. Bingo, there it is. There it is. Notice how that third light, that kicker, just puts a little sparkle on the shadow side of her hair. We get a nice little backlighting on the shoulder here. Also over here, a little more separation on the shadow side. This just works beautifully, I think. And that third light just adds the separation. Let's see if we can go back and call up the other shot here. You see the difference. We've got the dark here. It looks fine, but by just bringing out that kicker light, we're just adding that little added dimension there. So there you have it. Simple three-light portrait. Started with a flash-on camera and a slow build using Nikon speed lights to create a professional-looking beauty portrait, just as easy as that. Now, an important thing to remember when you're working with flash is that while there are two ways for our cameras to control available light coming into the camera, the shutter speed and the aperture, the amount of flash that hits our subject is really controlled only by the aperture. The way that shutter speed affects flash is in terms of synchronizing the opening of the shutter with the burst of the flash. Now, the fastest possible shutter speed that allows the flash to fire when the shutter curtains are fully opened is called the sync speed. Nikon cameras can sync in normal mode up to 1/250th of a second. But you're not required to work at the camera's top sync speed all the time. Any speed that is slower than the top sync speed will also work. Now, when we shoot below the top sync speed, it's called slow sync flash, and it's a very useful technique. Okay, let's take a look. We've got the one light again through the umbrella, and we want to get some separation from the background. Or we want to include the background, but it's simply too large to light. Now, this might occur if you were doing an environmental portrait in a large office or any large space, like this studio, for instance. How can we reveal that background light? Well, keeping in mind that our flash exposure is only controlled by the aperture, and also that flash tends to fall off very quickly. In other words, it doesn't travel all that far. What we can do is use the aperture to control our flash exposure here on our subject in the foreground. We have f/5.6 set on the camera, and the available light exposure for the background is 1/4 of a second. The flash is going to light the subject, then the shutter is going to stay open a little longer to burn in the background, and the result should be a seamless integration of flash and available light. Now, it's important to remember that if you are using slow sync, the shutter speed might drop to a speed at which you cannot handhold your camera steadily. So a tripod or a VR image stabilization lens will come in handy with this technique. Okay, let's see what we get. I'm going to shoot this first shot at 1/250th of a second, the top sync speed of the camera, and let's see what we get. Alrighty. Okay, there's the shot, and what we have is a perfectly exposed subject, but look at all that darkness behind her. There's no sense of the background whatsoever. And this is the way most of our flash shots look when we shoot at the top or higher sync speeds. It just loses all sense of the background, especially if the background is in low light. So for an environmental portrait or almost any kind of family shots, you want a sense of the background, the setting. How can we achieve that? Okay, we're going to try to drop that shutter speed a little lower to register the low light in the background. I'm going to drop this shutter speed to 1/4 of a second, and we'll take another shot, and we'll see what that slower shutter speed does. There it is, bingo. Now all of a sudden the background becomes lit and blended perfectly. We've got the perfectly exposed foreground, the subject in the foreground, and we have a great sense of her environment. Now, this is the great technique to use for environmental portraiture or almost any kind of family situations. You always want a sense of place when you're shooting people. You don't want them floating in darkness. So here it is, slow sync flash. It's a great technique. Now remember, all light has color. And remember too that Murphy wrote the law that rules the photographer's universe. We're often asked to work in situations where the color of the light is not ideal. One situation and one type of light that we often find ourselves in is fluorescent light. And we're going to find ourselves in fluorescent more and more as these low energy bulbs are being mandated into usage. Now, fluorescent light is very cost efficient, but it's very ugly. Why? Well, because it does not emit a full spectrum of light. It is very, very green. Now, we mentioned before how light affects your emotions, the emotions of the viewer. We've seen that nice, warm light looks rich and inviting. But if we had shot this same scene in a fluorescently lit room, it gives that sickly green color that you associate with hospital emergency rooms. So what can we do? Let's take a look. We're going to shoot our first shot just the way we see it. Okay, Taylor. Okay, let's see what we've got. Oh boy, okay. We've got that very heavy cast of green. We've got the wrong color balance. We have daylight balance set for in the camera, but our main sources of light are fluorescent. Fluorescent is very green, so the color of the light is way off. You can see the green highlights in her hair, you can see the green in the background, but also it's very contrasty, so the quality of the light isn't there either. Okay, I think I can clean this up by using a remote flash. Yes, I'm going to turn my flash back on. I'm going to move it in, again, a little closer here to get that nice 3/4 light. And hopefully, we're going to clean up that green. Now, I'm going to turn my master flash back on as the controller here. And we're going to take a shot and see what that does. All right. Oh, nice. Now, we've got a very clean skin tone here. She looks great, but look, there's still that leftover green highlight from the fluorescent here, and the background is still green. That's because we're still working in daylight white balance. What we've got to do to clean up that green is to change our white balance from daylight to fluorescent. Now that'll clean up all that green. So let's try that, and let's see what happens. So I take my white balance, I go from daylight to fluorescent, and we're going to take another shot. That looks great, Taylor. There we go. Okay, let's see. All right, now we see what messing around with changing the color is a kind of a house of cards here. By changing to the fluorescent light balance, we've cleaned up the background light, we've cleaned up the highlights, but now look how magenta her skin tone is. Why? Well, remember that the flash is balanced for daylight. It's a different color than the fluorescence. So we've corrected for the fluorescence by adding a little magenta thanks to the white balance, but now the flash looks too magenta. So what are we going to do? Well, we've got to make both light sources the same color. So rather than try to put daylight filters over all these fluorescent bulbs, it's easier to make our flash the same color as the fluorescent by adding a small filter, a green filter. So what I'm going to do is add this green gel filter to the front of the flash, and that will change the light balance of the flash unit from daylight to fluorescent. Now, let's take a shot and see what that does. Okay, here we go, Taylor. We're in the home stretch. Okay, and now we've got a beautifully lit environmental portrait, and that is what we call in the business a wrap. Taylor, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure working with you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Now let's take a look at how to work with Nikon's amazing creative lighting system, otherwise known as the CLS. And by the way, if you have any questions about the terminology we've been using, we've added a glossary of terms in your DVD package for your easy reference. The Nikon Creative Lighting System consists of the world's most intelligent and versatile, yet incredibly portable lighting tools that make flash control exceptionally intuitive. The system includes the innovative Nikon SB900 speedlight, as well as the SB800, SB600, and SBR200 speedlights. I'd like to show you how easy it is to set up and control Nikon speedlights in a variety of multiple wireless flash situations. By using Nikon's advanced wireless lighting system, you can set up the SB900 as a master flash unit in the commander mode, which allows you to wirelessly control Nikon remote speedlight units in as many as 3 different remote groups. We're also going to show you how to set up the Nikon D300 digital SLR using the built-in flash as a wireless commander. The steps are very similar to setting up cameras like the D700 and D80 that also have wireless commander control through the built-in flash, and the D3 with the SU800 wireless commander. And finally, we'll put together the R1C1 wireless close-up speedlight system, which is the perfect portable lighting system for indoor and outdoor close-up shooting, and comes supplied with the SU800 wireless commander. Let's start by setting up the SB900 speedlight to be our master flash unit for wireless multiple flash photography in the commander mode. When the SB900 is in master mode, the other speedlight units should be set to remote in order to fire wirelessly. The commander mode enables the SB900 to trigger remote Nikon speedlight units. While in commander mode, the SB900 wirelessly controls as many as 3 remote groups of speedlights, A, B, and C. Once the remote speedlight units are placed within a scene, you can conveniently and easily control their output without moving from your shooting position. The Nikon Creative Lighting System offers 4 separate channels, allowing several photographers using Nikon CLS-enabled wireless speedlights to set a channel different from yours. This prevents unintentional triggering of other speedlights in the same setting, such as at a wedding, press conference, or sporting event. However, if you're like me and you typically shoot by yourself, it's a good idea to pick one channel that you always work with and set your master and remote speedlights to always work with that channel. The SB900 places the wireless master and remote command switches on the outside of the speedlight. While holding down the button in the center, align the index on the power on-off switch to the master setting. And that's it. It really doesn't get much easier or quicker than that. The SB900's LCD display will change to the master view, which includes the groups, channel options, and compensation values that you'll be working with. First, be sure to choose and set the channel that will be used to trigger your remote speedlights. Press Function button 2 just under the CH on the display to highlight the channel. Turn the dial selector to choose the desired channel and press the OK button. My personal favorite, Channel 3. Let's set the flash mode and flash output level compensation value for the master unit. This procedure applies to setting groups A, B, and C. To set the flash mode, press Function button 1 on the master flash unit to highlight M. Press the Mode button, turn the dial selector to choose the desired flash mode, and press the OK button. Your flash mode options include TTL, through the lens flash metering, A for auto aperture, M for manual output, and these dashes mean that you have no light output from the master unit or selected group, although even with the dashes, a pre-flash will occur. You can change the flash output compensation value for the M group. Press Function button 2. Then turn the dial selector to choose the desired flash output level compensation value and press the OK button. Now, press Function button 1 to highlight the group A. Repeat these procedures to set the flash mode and flash output level compensation values of the remote flash units as we did with the M master speedlight. In the same way as with Group A, set the flash mode and flash output level compensation values of the remote flash units in Groups B and C. Now, if you want to make changes to the flash mode and power output of the remote speedlight units during shooting, you can do so from the Master SB900. The change will take effect immediately. You know, one of the things I've learned to do is trust in Nikon speedlight technology. And you should do the same. Although there are times when I'll try different modes, I typically choose the TTL flash mode and simply adjust the output compensation, plus or minus, based on the conditions of the scene. Now let's set up the Nikon D300 digital SLR as our commander. The steps are very similar to setting up cameras like the D700 and D80 that also have wireless commander control through the built-in flash. First, we select the wireless flash commander mode option within the custom settings menu under the built-in flash option. On the D300, the custom setting is E3. When you enter the commander mode, the built-in flash, Group A and Group B are all activated and set to TTL with 0 exposure compensation. In this scenario, the built-in flash will send a pre-flash signal to the remote speedlights with exposure and triggering information. You can adjust flash compensation for groups A and B as well as the built-in flash. Press the camera's multi-selector right or left to move into the mode or compensation windows for the built-in flash and both groups. Use the up and down arrows with the multi-selector to set your desired values. You can set the built-in flash as well as the A and B groups to fire and be factored into the exposure. Or they can be turned off individually depending on your lighting requirements. Just toggle the multi-selector to the right to enter the mode window for the item you want to turn off. Toggle the multi-selector up or down until you see the dashed lines. This means that the built-in flash or selected speedlight will not fire. Keep in mind that although you may turn off the built-in flash from being calculated into the exposure, it will still send the pre-flash signal to control the remote units. This pre-flash communicates with the other speedlights and does not occur during the actual exposure. Once you've set the commander mode to your liking, be sure that the channel you've selected matches the channel set on the remote units. Also, be sure to press the OK button to confirm and set the commander mode. Another thing to note is that the wireless flash commander mode works only in program, shutter priority, aperture priority, or the manual exposure modes. Now the good news is you can use an unlimited number of remote units in each of the speedlight groups, which offers an incredible amount of creative lighting control. Now, we'll attach the SU800 to the Nikon D3 digital SLR and use it as our wireless speedlight commander. By the way, the SU800 works with all Nikon CLS compatible digital SLR cameras, whether or not they have a built-in flash commander. In this configuration, the remote flash units can be divided into 3 groups, A, B, and C, and the flash output level can be separately set for each group of master and remote flash units. First, let's use the Commander Close-Up Select switch, found in the battery chamber area, to select the commander function that allows for 3-group remote operation. Then, turn on the D3 and SU800. Make sure that the ready light on the SU800 comes on. Now, we can set the remote flash unit's flash mode. Press the Select Function button to display the flash mode, which is blinking, for each group. The options for flash mode of our remote flash units include TTL, AA, M, or Flash Cancelled. TTL is recommended for normal flash shooting. Select the group name, A, B, or C. Press the arrow buttons, left or right, to change the flash output level compensation value in TTL and AA modes. Select the manual flash output in the M mode. Set the channel 1, 2, 3, or 4 by pressing the Select Function button to display the number, which is blinking. Press the arrow buttons, left or right, to change the channel number. Press the Select Function button again, and the channel number will stop blinking. The last channel number to blink is the one that has been automatically set. With advanced wireless lighting, you can operate multiple wireless remote speedlight units in the TTL, AA, or manual mode. You can divide the remote flash units into 3 groups and control the flash output independently for each group, expanding your range of creative multiple flash shooting techniques. Let's start by setting up the SB900 speedlight as the remote speedlight unit. Right here on the SB900, we're going to align the index on the power on-off switch to remote. Now, we'll assign group names and channel numbers on the remote flash units. First, press function button 1. Then turn the dial selector to choose a desired group name and press the OK button. The group name and channel number being set appears larger. For remote flash units, the SB900 in commander mode must be able to set the flash mode and flash output level compensation values of the remote units. So make sure to set the remote flash units into the same group as selected on the master unit. I'll press function button 2, then turn the dial selector to the desired channel number and press the OK button. Finally, we need to make sure to choose the same channel number as set on the master flash unit. Okay, now let's set up the SB800 speedlight as a wireless remote speedlight unit. With the SB800 on, press and hold the select button for 2 seconds. Locate the shaded box and use the multi-selector to toggle and highlight the wireless symbol. Press select for 1 second. Scroll down and select remote by highlighting it and pressing select for 2 seconds. The display will change to the remote view. Press select to highlight channel and use the plus/minus button to select the correct channel. Be sure to set the remote and master units to the same channel. And finally, press select again to highlight the group. Use the plus/minus button to choose group A, B, or C. The amount of output compensation set for groups A, B, and C on the master flash will determine the amount of output from the remote speedlights. Keep in mind that when placing any of the remote speedlights into position, the light sensor on the remote unit needs to see the pre-flash light directly or bounce from the master speedlight unit. To exit wireless and return to normal TTL operation, just reset the SB800 to normal TTL operation by holding the on-off and mode button for 2 seconds. When you're done, just reset all units back to their original status. Now, we'll set up the SB600 speedlight as a wireless remote unit. With the SB600 on, press and hold the zoom and the dash symbol together for 2 seconds. Press either the zoom or mode button to select wireless mode on or off. Set it to on. Press on/off once. The flash will be set in the wireless remote mode. The default setting is Channel 3, Group A. Press Mode to highlight the channel and select 1, 2, 3, or 4 using the plus/minus button. Be sure to select the same channel as the master flash. Press Mode again and assign a group, A, B, or C, for this remote speedlight. The amount of output compensation set for that group on the master flash will determine the amount of output from the remote speedlight group. The SB-R200 is another handy little Nikon speedlight to add to the mix of remote units. It offers a lot of creative options for close-up lighting as part of Nikon's wireless close-up speedlight system. It can also fit perfectly into any multiple lighting situation to selectively add a splash of light to an area or a scene. It can be held in your hand, or it can be freely positioned using the AS20 speedlight stand. To set up the remote flash, press the on-off button to turn on the SB-R200. Set the channel by rotating the channel select dial to the desired channel. Be sure to set the same channel number as set on the wireless commander. To assign the remote flash units to a group, rotate the Group Select dial. Once set, the SBR200 operates according to the controls set on the commander. The Nikon Creative Lighting System consists of the world's most intelligent, versatile, and yet incredibly portable lighting tools that make your flash control exceptionally intuitive. The system includes the groundbreaking Nikon SB800 speedlight, the SB600, SBR200 speedlights, and the SB900 speedlight. Now, I often refer to the array of Nikon cords that help connect cameras and flash units. But today, we're talking about wireless operations, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to set up and control Nikon speedlights in a variety of multiple wireless flash situations. By using Nikon's advanced wireless lighting system, you can set up the SB800 as a master flash unit in the commander mode. This allows you to wirelessly control your Nikon remote speedlight units in as many as 3 different groups. We're also going to show you how to set up your Nikon D300 digital SLR using the built-in flash as a wireless commander. The steps are very similar to setting up cameras like the D700 and D80 that also have wireless commander control through the built-in flash, and the D3 with the SU800 wireless commander. And finally, we'll put together the R1C1 wireless close-up speedlight system, which is the perfect portable lighting system for indoor and outdoor close-up shooting, and comes supplied with the SU800 wireless commander. First, we'll set up the SB800 to work as a master flash unit in the commander mode. While in commander mode, the SB800 wirelessly controls as many as 3 remote groups of speedlights, A, B, and C. Once your remote speedlight units are set up, you can conveniently and easily control their output without moving from your shooting position. Represented by M, the master flash on the camera can be set to output light within the scene or act solely as a trigger for the remote speedlights. The Nikon Creative Lighting System offers 4 separate channels, allowing several photographers using Nikon CLS-enabled wireless speedlights to set up a channel different from yours. This prevents unintentional triggering of the other speedlights in the same setting, such as at a wedding, press conference, or sporting event. However, if you're like me and you typically shoot by yourself, it's a good idea to pick one channel that you always work with and set your master and remote speedlights to always work with that channel. Now, before starting, we just need to make sure that the SB800 speedlight is connected to the hot shoe of a Nikon iTTL compatible camera. And with that, we're ready to set up the master flash unit. First, with the unit turned on, press and hold the SEL select button for several seconds. You'll see the LCD display change. Then, locate the shaded box and use the multi-selector to toggle and highlight this wireless symbol. Next, press select for 1 second. The arrow symbol will change to 2 arrows, one up and one down, and the off selection on the right will become shaded. Scroll down and select Master by highlighting it and pressing Select for 2 seconds. Now you can also press the On-Off button to quickly return to the main LCD view. The SB800's LCD display will change to the Master view, which includes the groups, channel options, and compensation values that you'll be working with. Press Select to highlight the M group. You can change the flash output compensation value for the M group by pressing the plus-minus button. Pressing Mode while group M, A, B, or C is highlighted will change how the speedlights in that group will react. Your flash mode options include TTL for through the lens metering, A for auto aperture, M for manual output, and these dashes mean that you have no light output from the master unit or selected group, although even with dashes, a pre-flash will occur. Press Select to jump from group M to A to B to C. You can set the amount of flash output compensation for each group by using the plus-minus button as you go. Use Select to highlight CH or channel, and use the plus-minus to select the channel you'll be working in. Now keep in mind that the channel you choose for the master speedlight must be the same channel set on the remote. Now if you want to change the power output of the remote flash units during shooting, you can do so from the SB800 master flash. The change will take effect immediately. The SB800 speedlight acts as a commander unit when placed in master mode. For other speedlight units to fire wirelessly, they must be set to remote. Now let's set up the Nikon D300 digital SLR as our commander. The steps are very similar to setting up cameras like the D700 and D80 that also have wireless commander control through the built-in flash. First, we select the wireless flash commander mode option within the custom settings menu under the built-in flash option. On the D300, the custom setting is E3. When you enter the commander mode, the built-in flash, Group A and Group B are all activated and set to TTL with 0 exposure compensation. In this scenario, the built-in flash will send a pre-flash signal to the remote speedlights with exposure and triggering information. You can adjust flash compensation for groups A and B, as well as the built-in flash. Press the camera's multi-selector right or left to move into the mode or compensation windows for the built-in flash and both groups. Use the up and down arrows with the multi-selector to set your desired values. You can set the built-in flash as well as the A and B groups to fire and be factored into the exposure. Or they can be turned off individually depending on your lighting requirements. Just toggle the multi-selector to the right to enter the mode window for the item you want to turn off. Toggle the multi-selector up or down until you see the dashed lines. This means that the built-in flash or selected speedlight will not fire. Keep in mind that although you may turn off the built-in flash from being calculated into the exposure, it will still send the pre-flash signal to control the remote units. This pre-flash communicates with the other speedlights and does not occur during the actual exposure. Once you've set the commander mode to your liking, be sure that the channel you've selected matches the channel set on the remote units. Also, be sure to press the OK button to confirm and set the commander mode. Another thing to note is that the wireless flash commander mode works only in program, shutter priority, aperture priority, or the manual exposure modes. Now the good news is you can use an unlimited number of remote units in each of the speedlight groups, which offers an incredible amount of creative lighting control. Now, we'll attach the SU800 to the Nikon D3 digital SLR and use it as our wireless speedlight commander. By the way, the SU800 works with all Nikon CLS compatible digital SLR cameras, whether or not they have a built-in flash commander. In this configuration, the remote flash units can be divided into 3 groups, A, B, and C, and the flash output level can be separately set for each group of master and remote flash units. First, let's use the Commander Close-Up Select switch, found in the battery chamber area, to select the commander function that allows for 3-group remote operation. Then, turn on the D3 and SU800. Make sure that the ready light on the SU800 comes on. Now, we can set the remote flash unit's flash mode. press the Select Function button to display the flash mode, which is blinking, for each group. The options for flash mode of our remote flash units include TTL, AA, M, or Flash Cancelled. TTL is recommended for normal flash shooting. Select the group name A, B, or C. Press the arrow buttons, left or right, to change the flash output level compensation value in TTL and AA modes. Select the manual flash output in the M mode. Set the channel 1, 2, 3, or 4 by pressing the Select Function button to display the number, which is blinking. Press the arrow buttons, left or right, to change the channel number. Press the Select Function button again, and the channel number will stop blinking. The last channel number to blink is the one that has been automatically set. With advanced wireless lighting, you can operate multiple wireless remote speedlight units in the TTL mode. You can divide the remote flash units in this mode into 3 groups and control the flash output independently for each group, expanding your range of creative multiple flash shooting techniques. Let's start by setting up the SB800 Speedlight as a wireless remote speedlight unit. With the SB800 on, press and hold the Select button for 2 seconds. Locate the shaded box and use the multi-selector to toggle and highlight the wireless symbol. Press Select for 1 second. The arrow symbol will change to 2 arrows, one up and one down. Scroll down and select Remote by highlighting it and pressing Select for 2 seconds. The display will change to the Remote view. Press Select to highlight Channel and use the plus/minus button to select the correct channel. Be sure to set the remote and master units to the same channel. And finally, press Select again to highlight the group. Use the plus/minus button to choose group A, B, or C. The amount of output compensation set for groups A, B, and C on the master flash will determine the amount of output from the remote speedlights. Keep in mind that when placing any of the remote speedlights into position, the light sensor on the remote unit needs to see the pre-flash light directly or bounce from the master speedlight unit. To exit wireless and return to normal TTL operation, just reset the SB800 to normal TTL operation by holding the On/Off and Mode button for 2 seconds. When you're done, just reset all units back to their original status. Now, we'll set up the SB600 Speedlight as a wireless remote unit. With the SB600 on, press and hold the Zoom and the dash symbol together for 2 seconds. Press either the Zoom or Mode button to select wireless mode on or off. Set it to on. Press On/Off once. The flash will be set in the wireless remote mode. The default setting is Channel 3, Group A. Press Mode to highlight the channel and select 1, 2, 3, or 4 using the plus/minus button. Be sure to select the same channel as the master flash. Press Mode again and assign a group, A, B, or C, for this remote speedlight. The amount of output compensation set for that group on the master flash will determine the amount of output from the remote speedlight group. The SB-R200 is another handy little Nikon speedlight to add to the mix of remote units. It offers a lot of creative options for close-up lighting as part of Nikon's wireless close-up speedlight system. It can also fit perfectly into any multiple lighting situation to selectively add a splash of light to an area or a scene. It can be held in your hand, or it can be freely positioned using the AS20 Speedlight stand. To set up the remote flash, press the on-off button to turn on the SBR200. Set the channel by rotating the channel select dial to the desired channel. Be sure to set the same channel number as set on the wireless commander. To assign the remote flash units to a group, rotate the group select dial. Once set, the SBR200 operates according to the controls set on the commander. Finally, let's set up the SB900 speedlight as the remote flash unit. Right here on the SB900, we're going to simply align the index on the power on-off switch wireless setting to remote. Now, we'll assign a group and channel for the remote unit. First, press Function button 1. Then, turn the dial selector to choose a desired group name, and press the OK button. The group name and channel number being set appear larger. I'll press Function button 2, turn the dial selector to select the desired channel number, and press the OK button. Finally, we need to be sure to choose the same channel number as set on the master flash unit. The Nikon Creative Lighting System offers us a range of simple automated tools for lighting our close-up photographs. The R1C1 wireless close-up speedlight system includes the SU800 wireless speedlight commander, 2 SBR200 wireless remote speedlights, and a host of other accessories that allow for working efficiently and creatively with flowers, watches, and other small objects. Now, the SBR200 attaches to the front of the lens with the XS1 attachment ring. Now, you can attach up to 4 of these units on the ring mounted on the front of your lens. You can also mount up to 8 units on the XS1 mounted on a light stand or tripod for an incredible circular light pattern around the ring. Used independently, the unit can be freely mounted on the AS20 stand for easy placement in any scene. In the commander mode, the SU800 wireless commander unit attaches to the hot shoe on the camera and coordinates the independent wireless operation of 2 groups, A and B, of SBR200s in the close-up mode, or 3 groups, A, B, and C, of compatible speedlights in commander mode. Now let's take a look at all these great tools for close-up lighting. Filters, holders, attachment rings for your different lenses, and so much more. You can even have a translucent diffuser panel with a flexible arm for even greater creative lighting control. And there you have it, a fully automated and independent wireless flash system for an unlimited combination of remote flash units to meet your photographic vision. Now keep in mind that if you have a Nikon camera with a built-in flash that acts as a wireless commander, the R1 outfit without the SU800 commander is also available. Both close-up speedlight outfits work with all other components of the CLS speedlight system, including the SB600. So let's see how it all works and take a picture. Okay, here's our basic close-up setup. I've got this lovely chrome pocket watch that I'd like to make a dramatic photograph to put on an online auction site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with basically the same kind of setup that we used with our model tail art yesterday. I'm going to start with 1 diffused side light. Now I'm using the diffusion sheet and the alligator clamp and arm that's included in the kit. And I've got one of the flash units right behind here. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I'm creating a larger light source than the actual size of the subject. So it's going to be a very soft but directional light. But the quality is going to be very diffused. Now I know from experience that when you're shooting chrome, you want to have a lot of fill cards for those nice white highlights, those nice reflected highlights. So I've taken some foam core that I've gotten from a stationery store and I've made a little fill card here. Now that's going to fill the side here. I've got white on the bottom, and now I'm going to complete the illusion here by actually putting a white top on it. So what I've done is created kind of a light tint around this, so that's going to give me this beautiful soft wrap with lots of open highlights. And I've got the SU800 wireless commander here. We're just going to use one diffused side light, and I'm going to use a black background. I'm going to use the bottom of the case here. You have to improvise when you're doing close-up photography, because I think that chrome is really going to stand out nicely against the black. So let's take our first exposure and see what we get. All right. Now you can see it's a beautiful shot. We get a lot of nice fill and everything on the shadow side because of the cards. The black looks great, pretty dramatic, but you know, I want to try a little variation here. There may be a little too much contrast between the black background and the bright chrome watch. So I'm going to take a piece of white foam core and I'm going to stick it right there as my backdrop. Now I'm going to take a second frame, and you're going to be interested to see what happens here. What happened to the white background? It looks gray, doesn't it? Well, remember what we said about flash falling off quickly. That's quite a distance between our main light and the background light. It's receiving a lot less light than our main subject, and it's fallen off, and it's rendered it as a nice mid-tone gray. Now, it looks great, but it's not white. It looks really good, but that's what happens when we say that flash falls off quickly. I'm not kidding. You see it's about a foot here and it's fallen off, but it gives us a nice gray background. But you know, you got to compete against a lot of things on these online sites, so I want to jazz it up a little. So I think I'm going to try to add a second light, maybe light the background a color by adding a red gel onto the second unit, and I'm going to throw that light on the background. And we've got the bright red there. That's going to look good. Just going to hide that behind the watch and aim it up towards the background. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, you see what that red does in the background. Not only does it create a beautiful wash of color, but now we can see through the watch parts. One of the selling points of this watch is that it has an open movement in the back and the front. And the red allows that to show through a little more than the gray or the black. So the red not only adds color, but it lets us see detail. Now I am using an f11 here to get sufficient depth of field, because you know when you're shooting macro, you need as much depth of field as you possibly can get. F11 seems to do the job. It gives me nice sharp front to back focus on the watch, but it doesn't focus too much on the background. So now it's just a matter of, you know, a little variety. So I'm gonna see, now that I know that the color on the background works well, I'm gonna try a different color and see what happens. The red is a hot color. Blue has more of a cool feel. Let's see what happens there. Okay. Now I'm controlling the output of each flash using the A and B channel on the SU800. So I can vary the power if I need to. But these gels seem to be about the same, so I'm going to start with the same settings. And let's see what happens when we do the blue. Okay, another nice rendition. Much cooler this time, but now we can still see through the watch, and now we have this blue wash behind it. So now, using these simple two strobes, I've done 4 different setups and created a shot that I think is going to sell this watch really fast. What we have in the Nikon Creative Lighting System is a compact portable set of lights. But compact lights are no good at all if you don't have something compact to work with. And the problem with a lot of studio equipment, light stands, umbrellas, and the like, is that they are built for the studio, and it's a little hard to move them around. Now, most of what I do is location and travel photography, so I've found lightweight, small, collapsible components that do the same job. And I'd like to share some of that with you now. All my gear for my little portable studio fits in this carry-on case. Let's take a look at the heart of it. To start with, I've got 3 speed lights, 2 SB900s and an 800. Now you notice I keep them in the cases just for extra protection, but I've got them pre-mounted on these little umbrella brackets. Now let's take a look. Why do I do that? Well, it's faster. I don't have to set them up each time I want to put them on a light. First, I've got the cold shoe where the flash is mounted. Why is it called a cold shoe? Well, it has no contacts, it's just a flash holder. Then I've got it on a small ball head here, and that's mounted to this umbrella bracket. Now I do the ball head because it's easy for me to get the flash right along the axis of the umbrella like that, and it's very convenient. So here we have the 3 speed lights. Now, to hold them, I've got 3 compact light stands. Look how small these collapse down, but they open up to about 6.5 feet, which is high enough for most of what I need to do. So here I've got 3 of these, studio in a box right here. I've got a 32-inch reflector with 5 surfaces. It can be white, translucent, silver, gold, or a mix of silver and gold. Now I'm interested in diffusing my light sources, so besides the reflector, I've also got 2 umbrellas. Now look how compactly these fold down, about 15 inches, but when they open up, they're about a 39-inch diameter umbrella. But they both fit in there just like that. Now, there are times when I don't want to diffuse the light, I want to concentrate the light. I want to focus that beam down. For that, I'm going to be carrying a pair of grid spots, and you can see they have different diameters in there for focusing the light tighter or a little looser, and they Velcro right onto the outside of the flash. And then I also have some snoots. Now a snoot wraps around and forms like a tube, wraps around the front of the light, forms a tube that restricts the flow of light as well. So I've got diffusers and concentrators, just light modifiers, very small and very compact. Now sometimes I have to shoot all day long with flash, and for those instances I have these extra battery packs, the SD9 and the SD8A. Now I often shoot with 2 camera bodies, one with a wide angle zoom and one with a telephoto zoom. So for that I carry not 1 but 2 of these SU-800 wireless commander units. That way I can seamlessly go from one camera body to the other and have my setup be controlled wirelessly. And finally, for those times where you just can't have a light stand in the picture, I carry just a little alligator clamp with a ball head and another cold shoe on, so I can clamp a unit onto a ceiling panel or a bookcase, the top of a door, anything like that. I've got my trusty roll of gaffer's tape. Now gaffer's tape, it's like duct tape, only the adhesive is a little more forgiving to walls and everything. Every photographer loves his gaffer's tape. You can get it at any camera store or lighting outlet. And then I've just got some extra colored gels, some extra batteries for my controllers, as well as extra batteries for the units themselves, and a few extra alligator clamps in here. And there you have it, a studio in a case. It fits in any airline's carry-on bin, so I can roll this on and roll my camera bag on and be ready for any assignment with just carry-on. Now that we know the what and the why of using speed lights, let's take a look at how with my good friend and colleague Joe McNally as he works out in the field. Now Joe is one of the most published photographers working today. His work has graced the covers of major publications from Sports Illustrated to National Geographic, and all kinds of commercial assignments from FedEx to Target. He frequently lectures and conducts workshops on lighting all around the world. We're going to join Joe on 3 locations: the Boston Ballet School, at a bride's home before her wedding, and cruising the Gloucester Harbor. We've picked these locations to illustrate that you don't have to fly halfway around the world to take great pictures. In fact, opportunities are right there in your own neighborhood, and all you need to do is seek them out. So let's go catch up with Joe over at the Boston Ballet School.